A rainy evening enveloped Alison's house in a shroud of mist as she entered her bedroom after a long day at work. She felt fatigue, a strange unease thickening the air, causing her heart to beat faster. Approaching the mirror hanging on the wall opposite her bed, she suddenly stopped. In the mirror's reflection, she saw something strange. Instead of her own reflection, she discerned the figure of a girl standing in the darkness behind her. Alison turned around, but there was no one in the room. She squinted, looking at the mirror. The girl in the reflection resembled Alison, but something was off. Her eyes were filled with despair, her hands trembling as if she was pleading or warning about something. Could it be a ghost? Alison's heart skipped a beat. She slowly reached out to touch the reflection, but her fingers passed through it like mist. She staggered backward, her frightened gaze fixed on the mirror. "What the heck?" she whispered, not taking her eyes off the reflection. But when she looked back at the mirror, the ghost had vanished, leaving only her own reflection. Alison's breathing grew heavy, her hands trembling. She turned away from the mirror, but felt as though someone or something was watching her from the darkness. "It was just my imagination," she told herself, trying to calm down. "Just fatigue from work." But even as she lay on the bed and closed her eyes, the image of the ghostly reflection wouldn't leave her thoughts. What was this strange phenomenon, and why was she the only one seeing it? Alison drifted off to sleep, frozen in anticipation of the next sign from the darkness. The next morning, Alison went to work at the hospital. Her day was hectic, and just before leaving, a severely injured man from a car accident was brought in, urgently needing surgery. The week had already been tough, compounded by the fact that she hadn't slept properly in a long time. The operation was successful, but exhausted, she slumped to the floor to catch her breath. Turning her head, she saw her tired reflection. As she looked away, fear pierced her, sending her heart racing, beads of sweat forming on her brow. In her peripheral vision, she noticed the image freeze, the reflection unable to look away from her. A sharp inhale, a moment that felt like eternity. Alison thought she must have dozed off or drifted into a daydream. It couldn't continue like this. She needed to rest, she thought, gathering her strength and leaving the operating room to continue her journey home. Several months had passed since Alison began investigating the mysterious reflections in her home. She continued living her ordinary life, but the shadow of recent events always haunted her like a dark specter. One day, while meeting friends at a restaurant, Alison's attention was drawn to a photograph hanging on the wall. The photo depicted her house, quite recognizable with its majestic facade and distinctive architecture. But what made Alison freeze in astonishment was that next to the house was an image of a girl, almost identical to herself. She stared intently at the photograph, feeling her heart pound harder. This was no mere coincidence. The girl in the photo bore a striking resemblance to Alison, as if she were her doppelganger. Her gaze, her facial features, even her posture. It all seemed familiar, as if Alison had seen this girl somewhere before. "Allie, are you okay?" her friend asked, noticing her stunned state. Alison looked away from the photograph and smiled, trying to mask her excitement. "Yeah, everything's fine," she said, but her thoughts still revolved around the mysterious photograph. Alison sat at her desk, leaning over old maps and archival documents. Her office was filled with ancient smells and silence, interrupted only by the faint ticking of an old clock mechanism she had long stopped paying attention to. With each passing day, the mystery of the ghostly reflections became more captivating for Alison. She felt compelled to unravel this mystery, to expose the origin of this strange phenomenon that had been haunting her lately. She decided to start by researching the history of her house. Old archival documents lay before her like a collection of ancient manuscripts, harboring the secrets of the past. Alison scanned through old property registers, trying to find any mentions of previous occupants of the house. And then she found what she was looking for: According to the old records, she discovered that her house was built in the late 19th century by one of the wealthy merchants whose family lived here for several generations. But what caught Alison's attention even more were the records of strange incidents that occurred in the house in the past. There were mentions of mysterious disappearances, unexplained fires, as well as strange sounds and visions that haunted the previous inhabitants. Alison realized that these events could be connected to what she herself had been experiencing lately. Her heart raced with excitement. She realized that there was something more to this house than just walls and furniture. There was mystique here, secret forces that she was only beginning to understand. Alison leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes and focusing on her thoughts. She realized that she was about to embark on a deep dive into the mystical world of her house, to uncover its dark secrets and perhaps find a way to rid herself of the ghostly reflections that haunted her. It was only the beginning of her journey into the world of mysticism and enigmas. Alison delved deeper and deeper into the history of her house. She spent hours in the archives, studying every minute detail of the local history. Each page, each record, brought new information about the past, but at the same time deepened the mystery of the house in which she lived. One day, as Alison was browsing through old photographs, she suddenly felt drawn to the reflection in the glass of a frame. In the reflection, she saw the silhouette of a woman, hauntingly looming in the background, like a ghost from the past. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but when she turned her head to look around the room, the woman disappeared. Alison couldn't forget this incident. She began to notice ghostly figures in other reflections in the house, in mirrors, windows, even in puddles of rain on the street. At first, she tried to attribute it to her tired imagination, but with each occurrence, the ghosts became more distinct and real. One of the ghosts she saw looked familiar. It was the girl from the photograph she had seen in the restaurant. She stood there in the mirror's reflection, with a sorrowful gaze and hands outstretched toward Alison, as if she were trying to convey something. Among all the strange occurrences in this house, they were all united by one thing. All the ghosts were young, as if their age was uniform, or they were contemporaries. They were all lonely and fairly wealthy, except for one girl. Alison found information about her in the old archives. The girl from the photograph came from a poor family and ended up in this house as a maid. There was little information about her, but the record of her death after a fire in this house remained, or rather, her disappearance without a trace. Alison felt that this was the key to unraveling the mystery. The girl in the photograph was the link connecting the past to the present. She decided that in order to understand the messages of the ghosts and uncover the secrets of the house, she needed to start by investigating this girl's death. And so Alison set out to find additional information about her life and the circumstances of her death. She decided that only by learning the truth about this girl could she unravel the mysteries hidden in the dark corners of her house. Alison delved deeper into the history of her house, uncovering the dark secrets hidden within its walls. The ghosts of previous inhabitants became increasingly insistent in their warnings, but their messages were cryptic and ambiguous. She saw them in reflections, heard their whispers in the darkness, felt their presence in the air. They warned her of the danger associated with the dark forces entwined in the house's past, but Alison couldn't understand what exactly they were trying to tell her. Trying to decipher the puzzle, Alison spent days and nights studying old records, rereading eyewitness testimonies, and questioning longtime residents. But the more she learned, the more unanswered questions remained. She felt that time was against her. The dark forces lurking in her house were becoming more active and aggressive. Alison knew she needed to unravel the mystery as soon as possible, before it was too late. One day, as she delved back into her research, Alison heard a whisper in the darkness. "Beware! Danger is near. Do not let it consume you." The words of the ghosts echoed in her ears, like a warning from the past itself. She startled, her heart beating faster. What did they mean? What danger threatened her and her home? Questions swirled in her mind, but the answers seemed out of reach. Alison understood that she would have to delve even deeper into the secrets of the house, confront its dark past, in order to solve the puzzle and save herself and her home from the dark forces that sought to consume them both. Alison's heart pounded heavily as she decided to seek help from an expert in paranormal phenomena. She understood that without the assistance of a specialist, it would be difficult for her to unravel the mystery of the ghostly reflections and find a way to stop them. Alison found the contact of an expert whose reputation in the world of paranormal research was impeccable. She described her situation to him: the strange reflections, the ghostly warnings, the dark forces lurking in her house. The expert expressed willingness to help, and they arranged a meeting. The meeting took place in his office, filled with books on paranormal phenomena and various artifacts. Alison described everything that had been happening to her lately, and provided him with all the information she had about the past occupants of the house and the ghost of the girl from the photograph. The expert listened attentively and asked a series of questions, trying to better understand the essence of the problem. Then he began to analyze the data provided and conduct his own research. Several days later, the expert invited Alison for a follow-up meeting to share his findings. He explained that the ghosts of the previous inhabitants of the house likely left not only their reflections, but also their souls behind, which sensed the danger associated with the dark forces and tried to warn Alison about it. He clarified that in order to unravel the mystery of the ghostly reflections and find a way to stop them, they would have to delve into the depths of the house's past, explore its history, and unravel the secrets hidden within its walls. Alison nodded gratefully, realizing that she was facing a difficult but necessary task. She was ready to continue her search for understanding and strength to confront the dark forces threatening her and her home. Everything sounded complex. She pondered about the various artifacts in the house and what significance and history they might hold, but after the fires, reconstructions, little remained the same. On that Sunday morning, as Alison was getting ready to go for a run, she decided to quickly glance at herself in the mirror in her bedroom to check her appearance. But as she approached the mirror, it suddenly flew off the wall and shattered into countless shards. Shocked, Alison pressed herself against the wall, startled by the unexpected event. Dazedly, she surveyed the spot where the mirror had hung and noticed that the part of the wall behind it looked somehow strange. It was evident that something was concealed beneath the paneling. Her heart pounded with excitement as she decided to dismantle this section of the wall. The wall turned out to be brick, which only heightened Alison's astonishment. It seemed like no one had touched this part of the wall since the house was built. With trepidation yet determination, Alison began to peel away the paneling until she uncovered a void behind it. She held her breath, fearing to discover something dreadful and dangerous, but instead she found an old box concealed behind the wall. Her heart skipped a beat as she took the box in her hands. It was covered in a layer of dust and looked as if it had been lying here for many years. With trembling hands, Alison opened it and found several photographs inside. One of the photographs depicted that mysterious woman, smiling, holding hands with a young man. In another photograph, the same woman was holding the hairpin that Alison had found earlier in the box. Among the photographs lay a letter from the young man to the woman, in which he confessed his feelings and expressed his love. Alison stared at the photographs, feeling a new wave of excitement and understanding awaken in her heart. All the puzzle pieces were slowly coming together in her mind. She realized that this woman was the key to unraveling the mystery of the house and her own destiny. Alison resolved to continue her investigations and uncover the whole truth about the house's past, the ghosts, and herself. With each passing day, Alison felt that the dark forces lurking in her house were becoming increasingly aggressive. The ghosts, warning her, distorted reflections to frighten and disorient her. She understood that time was running out to unravel the mystery of the house and stop the dark forces threatening her fate. One day, when Alison returned home after a hard day's work, she found her house permeated with a dark aura. Shadows twisted and contorted in the corners of rooms. Reflections in mirrors were warped and distorted, as if thirsting for a confrontation. Alison's heart beat faster as she realized that the moment of reckoning with evil had come. She could no longer run away, hide, or postpone her destiny. Alison understood that she needed to find the strength within herself to face these powerful forces of evil. Aware that she would have to face danger head-on, Alison gathered all her courage and resolve. She decided to stand up for her home, her destiny, and all whom she loved. With each step through the corridors of her home, Alison felt the tension mounting. She approached the mirror, which had previously been a source of fear, and looked at her distorted reflection. "I won't let you control me," she whispered, looking at the reflection as if issuing a challenge. A surge of determination filled her. Alison stood before the mirror, ready to confront the evil that sought to engulf her. She realized that true strength lay not in avoiding confrontations, but in facing them, despite all trials and dangers. With this thought in her heart, Alison entered into a confrontation with evil, ready to resist the dark forces that sought to consume her. As Alison stood before the mirror, awaiting an attack from the dark forces, something unexpected happened. The ghostly reflection, which had previously been distorted and frightening, now looked at her with a secret, almost pleading smile. She felt that something was changing and resolutely followed the ghost's indication. Entering the living room, Alison discovered stacks of old newspaper clippings and notes she had gathered during her investigation of the house's past. Now, as she looked at them with a new perspective, they began to reveal their secrets to her. Understanding came to her in an instant. The ghost didn't want to harm her. He wanted her to understand the truth, which he couldn't convey to her in any other way. All these clippings and notes were pieces of a puzzle that she had to put together to see the full picture of the house's past. Focused, Alison began to study the information she had already gathered. Like magic, each piece began to interact with another, forming a clear picture of the past. She saw a story of love, betrayal, secrets, and suffering connected to this house and its inhabitants. The ghost, standing behind her through the mirror, silently watched as Alison uncovered the secrets of the past. Alison couldn't understand until she saw a group photo on which was depicted a young guy. He was the son of the people who hired her. She realized that the letter was from him. Stunned by this new discovery, Alison couldn't believe her eyes. The young man in the photograph was the son of the people who hired her to work in this house. It was the same young man who wrote the letter, expressing his feelings to the mysterious woman she had seen in other photographs. All the pieces of the puzzle slowly fell into place in Alison's mind. She realized that these people who had lived here before were connected to the dark history she had just begun to uncover. Their son was part of that history, and his feelings for the mysterious girl, which he expressed in the letter, became the key to understanding the house's past. With a deep sigh of understanding, Alison turned back to the stack of clippings and notes. Now, with a new perspective, every fact, every detail began to take on a new meaning. The story came alive before her eyes, as if the pages of an old book were revealing their secrets. With each new discovery, Alison felt herself getting closer to unraveling the mystery of the house. She realized that the ghosts standing behind the mirror were trying to convey to her a story that had long been forgotten, but continued to live in this house and in her own heart. With a firm resolve to complete her mission and free the house from the dark forces, Alison continued to study the information gathered in the living room, ready to uncover the final mysteries of the past and find a way to reconcile with it. When Alison discovered a police report among the stack of documents, her breath caught in her throat. The report described a fire that occurred in this house many years ago, and the tragic death of a young man. He was the son of the family who hired her to work in this house. Recalling the fresh shock of the discovery, Alison imagined that terrible night. The fire consuming the kitchen, the sounds of screams and burning wood, the smell of smoke that filled her nostrils. And amidst all this chaos, a young man facing death because of the fire that could have been prevented. The next piece of information was even more shocking. The report stated that the cause of the fire was negligence in the kitchen. It was likely the result of carelessness or an accident. But for the boy's parents, it was nothing but the result of the girl's irresponsible behavior, who was in their house at the time. Alison couldn't help but guess that the parents blamed the girl for everything that happened. The loss of their son, so sudden and tragic, made them look for someone to blame and accuse. But she couldn't imagine what the pain and suffering must. With a heavy heart, Alison took the box and approached the mirror, feeling the onset of the moment of truth and liberation. Looking into the glass, she spoke with a quiet yet determined voice. "I'm sorry. You're not to blame. Your belongings, like you in this story, should have found peace long ago." Then, feeling a sense of lightness and liberation, she decided that it was time to bid farewell to the past once and for all. The next morning, as the sun shone brightly and the ocean beckoned with its waves, Alison headed out of town to the shore. Standing at the water's edge, holding the box she had found in her old home, Alison took a deep breath and threw it into the sea, feeling the weight of the past releasing from her heart. As the box disappeared beneath the waves, Alison looked into the water and saw the reflection of a ghostly silhouette, which now smiled at her. In that smile was an unseen peace and tranquility. With a deep sense of satisfaction and reconciliation, Alison turned and made her way back to her new life. The calm of the ocean and the welcoming light of the sun filled her soul, while the serene, smiling, ghostly figure became a symbol of the completion of a long and challenging journey. And so, with mixed feelings of farewell and new beginnings, Alison moved forward, ready to embark on a new chapter of her life with a sense of peace and freedom in her heart.